Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Inshallah, we have a wonderful presentation today. Ibrahim Souadda is our khatub for today. He's going to give us a presentation on community. And Sister Denise Ziya Berte, inshallah I say that properly, is going to be speaking on Hope in Darkness, Islamic Faith in Action during our Community Learning Dialogue segment. We have no announcements today, so Sister Gail is not joining us, but inshallah, we look forward to your participation. As always, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat section or send me a note on Facebook, and we'd be happy to address your questions. Otherwise, turn your cameras on so we can see all your smiling faces, and inshallah, we look forward to today's presentation. Ibrahim, I'm gonna turn things over to you. Let me see if I can unmute you. There you go. All right, Ibrahim, thanks for joining us.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله قال الله في القرآن الكريم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, O you who believe, have consciousness in Allah as He deserves, and die not except in a state of Islam. My bad. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. I don't deserve to be on here. I'm sure there's much better speakers out there. But as this is a relatively new community center, and upon reflection, alhamdulillah, I'll be getting married soon, thinking about where I want to be and the types of communities I want to be a part of, and in reflection about what I think some of the challenges we have as communities in America and perhaps some potential solutions, I felt this was maybe a good topic. So one of the things, I'd like to start with is reminding ourselves of a beautiful narration that is described to us about the 7 different types of people that will be shaded on the day in which there's no shade except the shade of Allah, in the day of judgment. And one of those groups of people is those that are attached to the masjid, or for our purposes, those that are attached to their community. And so, we hear this hadith, but then we also see a dramatic decline in attendance to not just the masajid, but also churches and synagogues. And so we have this kind of global phenomenon of a decrease in religiosity overall, but then also a decrease in attendance to religious spaces. Why this is problematic is because what I feel is the significance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioning that those that are attached to the masjid are one of the ones that are shaded is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I believe, and what I've gained from my teachers is that He understands and He recognizes the high esteem that human sentiment has towards places of worship. He recognized, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instilled in our hearts a natural, a fitra level attachment to places of worship, right? Places where the presence of Allah is meant to be garnered. And so one of the challenges that we have, if we look back historically in America, is that, one of my teachers made a comment about this idea of the ethnic masjid. And so, we have to recognize that when our immigrant families came, they built masajid, one as a place of worship, but also as a place of gathering for themselves. And so it became very segregated, and it's oftentimes you'll go to a new city in my travels, when I go to places like Chicago and Toronto and things like that, I ask, tell me about the masjid in the area. And the person that's showing me around will tell me, oh, well, the Pakistani masjid is in this area, and then you have the Egyptian masjid in this area, and maybe you have the African masjid in this area. But there's clearly a separation. And so America becomes increasingly more diverse, right? And as America becomes more diverse and these ethnic lines become blurred, the Masajid are now presented with a problem, because you have people coming from very specific places, bringing with them a very specific idea and very specific types of culture. This is not inherently a bad thing. And in fact, it's perfectly natural. You know, there's a saying that the Arabs have: my homeland, even if it's oppressive to me, is dear. Why? We have an attachment to people that speak the same language as us, people that think the same way as us, people that look like us. And so, especially when you leave your home and you're coming to this new place seeking opportunity and things like that, naturally you're going to see people congregate. But because things are changing, people are intermarrying in different cultures and communities are coming together, and people's children are having friends with different types of people. You have what's now being recognized as a generation gap. You know, you have parents thinking one way about something, and you have the children that are in a completely different planet, it seems. You know, as parents, when you look at your children, it's like they're aliens. And so how do we fix this? And I think the first place to start is with a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. You know, he invites us to rethink this relationship. And he says that a person that does not revere our elders and is not merciful to our young isn't one of us. So the Prophet ﷺ is making a rather serious statement, right? So as a community, you know, we want to have membership that is predicated on respect for our elders, period, full stop. So as children, we have to recognize that. As young people, we have to recognize that if we don't respect our elders, we're not a part of this community. And by this community, I don't mean your local masjid, I mean the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ. So if you don't respect your elders, you're putting yourself in a position to remove yourself from the fold of the Prophet ﷺ's community. And there's no better community than that one. But what happens is our elders also hear this, and they hear the first part and they love it, and they remind the young people all the time. The Prophet ﷺ said, you have to respect your elders. But then they forget to quote the second half of the hadith, you know, where you have to have mercy on the youth. And so it becomes this very bi-directional relationship. You know, so we have to have a community in which we're able to instill these values in our young people, but also have to help as young people and other elders that understand this concept. How can we figure out a way to, you know, get the elders on board with this idea of having mercy with the youth? And what does that look like? You know, as our communities are getting more funding and the buildings are getting bigger, you know, we see this trend of, let's have a room in the masjid. We're going to get a foosball table and we're going to buy them some pizza, and that'll fix our problem. This is not the solution, because really what that is just babysitting. This is not instilling in them, one, respect for the elders, and two, you're not solving an inherent issue that's within the youth by just saying, here's a foosball table and here's some pizza. You're not teaching them to love the religion. You're not teaching them to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're not teaching them to love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when you do something like that. Is that an element of youth engagement? For sure. But I see that we often spend too much time focused on building domes and making sure that the masajid have really nice chandeliers, more than we are focused on developing programs and people. And so the way we spend our money and the way we budget for programming and for community leadership, you know, how much do imams get paid? Almost nothing. How many masajid even have a youth director? Very few. But they all look really nice. And so this becomes inherently very problematic into the way we start our communities. And, you know, one of my teachers refers to this as a paperwork people work problem. We put a lot of emphasis in paperwork, making sure that all our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed. But there's no people work. The people just show up and there's no refinement. The elders come and they stay the same, and the children come and they stay the same. There's no growth. But it's a really beautiful building, and it's a nice place to pray Jummah. But we have to start moving away from figuring out ways to take care of a building, of a structure, and figure out ways to take care of people. And so I'm reminded of a story of Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ. In the years that the Prophet ﷺ was born, there's the story of the elephant in the Quran. The ruler at that time, his name was Abraha. And when he came, he took a lot of livestock and things like that from the people while he was attempting to conquer the Kaaba. And so Abdul Muttalib goes to Abraha and he arranges a meeting with him. Abraha is thinking he's going to make a plea to save the Kaaba. And so when Abraha comes, he's ready to deny him. Abdul Muttalib comes and says, you took several of my camels. I would like them back. So Abraha is kind of shocked by this and says, okay, yeah, I have your camels, but you don't have anything to say about the Kaaba? And Abdul Muttalib's response is something that I think is important for us to remember. He says that, I'm the Lord of the camels, not of the Kaaba. All I can control is what I do with my camels. Abraha says, okay, you can have your camels back, but he's still confused. He says, that's not my home. That's the house of Allah. Allah will take care of his home. As long as I take care of my camels, I'll be okay. This is a positive thing for us to remember because it means of being optimistic. Our job is not to worry about the masjid. As long as we have 4 walls and a place to congregate, our responsibility is our people. Ultimately, Allah is the Lord of everything, including us. But the responsibility He has given us as parents, as spouses, as brothers and sisters is of each other. A parent's responsibility to their children and a child's responsibility to their parents. As long as we take care of that affair, the masjid will be okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of His home. Right? And so this shouldn't lead us to be negligent. And if we rise to the call, we can have a very bright future as a community. That being said, I'm going to transition into talking a bit more about engaging the youth and how I feel the seriousness of that is. One of the things that's central to serving the youth is first and foremost making sure that they know they're loved. By who? One, they need to know that they're loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Growing up, that's not something traditionally that we're taught. The second thing is that they need to know that they're loved by the Prophet ﷺ. These two things, what seem to be abstract relationships to a young person, need to be made tangible. And we have ways to do that. That a child needs to know that his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not esoteric. It's a tangible relationship. And there are things that we can do to solidify that relationship. That, for example, you find Christians have a beautiful practice that before they go to bed, they kneel at the side of their bed and they pray with their parents. You find this often. This is a very beautiful practice that Muslims can adopt to make their relationship with Allah tangible, that you pick a time of day with your children in which you have a conversation with Allah outside of Salah, that you teach them that the power of dua is not just you asking Allah for something, but that there is a back and forth, whether you can hear it or not. That as you complain to your parents and as you talk to your parents about your day, that you can have that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He's with you more than they are. Loving the Prophet ﷺ. There are things that we can do to make that relationship tangible. For us growing up, the Prophet ﷺ was like a superhero, almost make-believe. this perfect person that had all these beautiful abilities and this way of commanding people that seems so far away from us. We don't know anything about him. We don't know what he looks like. We don't know what he sounded like. We didn't know the way he joked. We didn't know the way he interacted with his friends, with his companions, with his wives, with his children. We didn't know any of these aspects about him. All we knew was that he was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But we have things. Our scholars prepared us for this, and they created collections of hadith like the Shama'il. And if you guys want a look at what the Shama'il looks like, there's a beautiful new translation. I'm sure that we can share the link in the next newsletter or something like that. But there's a beautiful new English translation of the Shama'il of Imam al-Tirmidhi, a collection of hadith that's dedicated to teaching us about the physical characteristics of the Prophet ﷺ, what his hair color looked like, what his skin color looked like, how long was his hair, how far apart were his eyes, what did it look like when he was angry, how did he walk down the street, what were the ways that he would come behind his sahabas and cover their eyes and say, guess who it is? And the sahaba would begin to cry and say, by the feeling of your hands, I know it's you, Ya Rasulullah. And they would turn around, they'd kiss his blessed hands, and he would make dua for them. This type of education that is lacking in our communities is something that takes your relationship with the Prophet ﷺ from something that is a fairy tale to something that is tangible. That my ability to describe the Prophet ﷺ in great detail makes him real to me. That in my mind, I know what he looks like. Those are the two first and foremost, most important relationships that we need to alter in our children. And the second is that they need to know they're loved by their elders. In my generation, when you ask the young people, how many times did the elders in your community, including your parents, tell you, I love you? Surprisingly or not, the response has been overwhelmingly, no, not really. I knew my parents loved me. Alhamdulillah, I didn't have that. I see my mother. Alhamdulillah, that wasn't my issue. My mom told me she loved me a lot. But for a lot of my peers and a lot of my friends, the words, I love you, were not always articulated. Now, does that mean the parents never express love? Of course not. I think every child in my generation knows that their community and that their parents love them. But how we express that love is not so much in your face as it should be. And why is this important? One of the great activists and community leaders of our time, Dr. Cornel West, he once said, I am who I am because someone loved me. I am who I am because someone loved me. And it's difficult because, as parents and as community leaders and things like that, I might not always say, but I do. I show you that I love you. I have there's a roof over your home. You've got clothes on your back. There's food on your table. How could you not know I love you? But because of the way the mind works, and studies are coming out, and we're learning more and more about anxiety and depression and mental illnesses and things like that, that although you might be showing someone that you love them or that you care about them, it's important and it's critical to remind them with your words, I love you. The kalima of Tawheed is what you can feel in your heart that you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you love the Prophet, you believe he's the messenger, but the first commandment is to say it with your mouth. To say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. That yes, although it is important for this speaking to manifest itself in the heart, the first order of business is to say it out loud. And so we have to tell our children and the young people in the community that we love them with our words. It's not enough to just show them. There's an African proverb that was once taught to me by one of my teachers that says, if the youth are not initiated into the village, they will burn it down just to feel its warmth. If the youth are not initiated into the village, if they are not given responsibility, if they're not made to feel a sense of ownership over the place that they are expected to spend a significant amount of time, they will, burn it down to feel its warmth. What does that look like in today's day and age? it's going to look like rebellion. It's going to look like they're tearing up the masjid, that they're running around, that things are breaking, items are being misused, or even worse, that they're not coming at all. This is a form of burning down your spaces, that you just neglect them. You don't even come. You know, and then you have some of my peers that will tell me, yeah, you know, I never really heard I love you, but, you know, I turned out okay. You know, I don't think that there was a big deal. You know, they might not have said I love you a lot, but I'm fine. I've got a job. I'm married now. You know, I'm getting ready to have kids. My life isn't that bad. When we investigate the depths of which hearing I love you have, you know, a story is brought to my mind about the type of relationship the Prophet ﷺ had with his Sahabas, especially the young Sahabas. You know, the Prophet ﷺ, he was in a gathering with people, with some of the older Sahabas, people like Abu Bakr and people like Umar, radiallahu anhum warda. And a young Sahaba came to the Prophet ﷺ in the middle of this gathering with a sense of urgency. And he comes right to the Prophet ﷺ and he says, Ya Rasulullah, adinni fi zina. Ya Rasulullah, give me permission to fornicate. He's a young man. He's got urges, he's got feelings, he's got desires, and he doesn't know what to do, but he has enough of a relationship with the Prophet ﷺ, the messenger of Allah, the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the most, the one that whose name is engraved on the doors to Jannah. He comes to him and he says, Ya Rasulullah, permit me to fornicate. That question alone to the messenger of God, can you imagine a young person feeling comfortable enough and confident enough and secure enough in the relationships that he has with his elders in the community to be able to ask something like that? I can tell you from personal experience and from the experience of others, there's not a single relationship in the community that they feel comfortable enough to ask something as bold as that. And then you have people like Umar ibn Khattab in the gathering that are ready to draw their swords. How could you say something like that to the Prophet ﷺ? You have no shyness about you. How could you ask something like that to the Prophet ﷺ? And so we see examples like this in our community, that, for example, a sister may walk into the masjid without her hijab, or that you know, a brother may come in with shorts that are too short, or they might have a question that is considered too taboo. What is the reaction by the elders around them? Right, they're yelled at, they're told that this is not appropriate for the masjid, these things that are serious issues for them, and then they end up not coming back. What's the Prophet ﷺ's response? I won't narrate the whole hadith, but his response becomes very important. Two things. The first things he tell the young man to do, he says, sit down and sit close to me. So close that the young man's knees were touching the Prophet ﷺ's knees. The Prophet ﷺ knew what it meant to show someone love, that it took a physical connection, a verbal connection, and a heart connection. So their knees were touching, and the Prophet ﷺ asked him a series of questions. The first being, would you like this for your mother? So he brought it to his level. He brought it to a place in which the young man could understand. He knew that the young man had a mother, and so he asked him, would you like this for your mother? He made it something that is relatable to him. I'm not going to continue the hadith because I know I have a limited amount of time, but the way the young man responded was, Ya na'am ya Rasulullah, ja'alni laha fi laka. What does that mean? Yes, O Messenger of Allah, may Allah make me your ransom. And in old Arabic, when you tell someone, may Allah make me your ransom, it's equivocal to someone saying, yes, Ya Rasulullah, I would take a bullet for you. I would die for you. That the way the young man heard the Prophet ﷺ was in such a gentle way that the young man was so secure in his relationship with the Prophet ﷺ that not only did he respond yes, and he was able to engage in the conversation, but he declared the highest level of love that you can for a person. I would die for you. Yes, Ya Rasulullah, I would take a bullet for you. That I'm telling the truth. Yes. This is the type of relationship we need to have with our elders. I'm going to move down to the last and final part of this, this speech, I guess you could say. And it's a word of hope, I think, for myself at least. We have some issues in our community that we need to take care of. The young people need to learn to have respect for their elders. Although they might have differences in their opinion, and although they might not necessarily see the wisdom that the elders bring, you need to stay respectful. And that for the elders, you might not understand where the young people are coming from, that they've grown up in a different place, that they've grown up in a different generation, in a different world. You have to be merciful to them and find a way to disseminate your wisdom in a way that they understand. You have to learn to speak their language. The last thing I will say for all of us is two things: the power of La ilaha illallah wa Muhammadun Rasulullah. There's two quick stories I'll tell. The first one is of a man that came to the khutbah of the Prophet ﷺ and interrupted him in the middle of his khutbah. This, first of all, this alone, the fact that, again, people had such a secure relationship with the Prophet ﷺ that they felt bold enough that they could interrupt him in the middle of the khutbah. Imagine interrupting your local khatib. What would happen? You'd be kicked out of the masjid without hesitation. The Prophet ﷺ, told him to hold on and that he would, come to him after the khutbah. And so the Prophet ﷺ comes to him after the khutbah and says, what was your question? And the Prophet the man says, Ya Rasulullah, tell me about the end of times. And so the Prophet ﷺ tells him that holding on to faith will be like holding on to a hot coal. It'll be very difficult. And then the Prophet ﷺ describes that there will be strife and discord. And so the man, and then he asks the man, what have you prepared for the end of times? And the man says, I don't have much prayer. I don't have much fasting. I'm not good in my ibadah. But I'll tell you this, I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I love you, O Messenger of Allah. And the Prophet ﷺ tells him that you will be with the one that you love. The last story I will tell you is of a scholar speaking to another scholar. And they're talking about a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where the Prophet ﷺ talks about telling us that there will be a time in which people will say La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah, but they won't know what it means. They won't be a people of fasting. They won't be a people of zakat. They won't be a people of salat, but they will say La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. And when they are asked, why do you say it? They will say, we don't know why we say it, but our forefathers used to say it, and so we continue to say it. Nah. So the young scholar asked the older scholar, what salvation could they possibly have? These people, they don't fast, they don't pray, they don't pay their zakah. It's just lip service. What salvation could they have? The scholar looks at the young scholar in a very deep way, and he says, mark my words, La ilaha illallah wa Muhammad Rasulullah will be the thing that saves them. So you always say that. There's power in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and that no matter, as long as we are repeating that, we might be deficient in many aspects of our lives, and our communities might be deficient, but as long as we are a community that continues to say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, inshallah ta'ala, by the mercy of Allah, will be okay. The times that we're living in are, as the Prophet ﷺ predicted, that there will be times of extreme violence, that the one who kills will not know why he is killing, and the one that is killed will not know why he is killed. That people will wake up believers, and by the time the night falls, they are disbelievers. And in the morning, they believe again, and then by night, they disbelieve again. That faith will be something that is fluid, that you'll be falling in and out of faith, surrounded in violence. But the Prophet ﷺ leaves us with something when he says that this faith began as a strange thing and it will end as a strange thing. So glad tidings to the strangers, that if you're able to say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah with all the craziness that's happening in the world now, by Allah, inshallah ta'ala, by His mercy, we'll be okay. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. I hope that this was beneficial. I'll leave 3 points really quick because I know it was long and I'm sure I rambled. The first one being respect your elders and have mercy on the young people. Remember that. 3, engage the youth. Initiate them into the village. Let them feel your warmth. Say the words, I love you. And the last thing, La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah, can be the words that save you even in the hardest times. Alhamdulillah. Anything of benefit is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from His Messenger Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and from my teachers, and anything that has been incorrect is from me and me alone, and from the shaitan, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam to Allah. Jazakallah khair, Ibrahim. Thank you so much. MashaAllah. And yes, Habibi, I love you. So, MashaAllah, we had a few comments. I'm just going to make those few comments, Sister Denise. Inshallah, forgive me. Let me just read to the group. So Sister Maha said, Salam, those were excellent points, especially when you were talking about reminding the youth that we love them, that our communities love them, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves them. Brother John said, Jazakallah khair, Ibrahim, this point is critical, that children should know that they are loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One thing we are doing with our children is introducing them to Allah the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduces Himself in the Quran. So we are reviewing the 99 names and discussing what that means of Himself. MashaAllah. That's an excellent, excellent idea, subhanAllah. And Sister Sophia said, MashaAllah, that was wonderful. We need to hear from you more often. So inshallah, Ibrahim is on our regular rotation now. So unfortunately, he lives with the person who helps do the schedule. So he doesn't get a whole lot of wiggle room to be able to say no. Jazakallah khair, Ibrahim. And Sister Denise, I'm going to turn it over to you now. We're really looking forward to your talk. Thank you for being with us.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brother Ibrahim. It really is a blessing to hear from younger people and to hear that energy and to also have that education. And thank you all for being here and for offering me another opportunity to talk a little bit about the things that are happening in the world. The first thing that I want to do really is to acknowledge, because I have not always been a part of our Friday services with you all
in
this time, is to really acknowledge the amount
I'll figure it out. Thank you.
that we have been through in the past 3 months. We have faced a global pandemic. We have faced civil unrest. Here in the main line, we have withstood half tornadoes and downed electricity lines and all sorts of really frightening, startling, dark, scary kinds of circumstances that really and truly have never happened at the same time in the same way within our lifespan. So I do want to acknowledge the actual difficulty, the darkness that these 3 months may have brought to us, despite the fact that we had our beautiful month of Ramadan, we had Eid in a very different way. And I want to talk about, so how do we keep going? How do we keep moving and living as faithful Muslims in the face of all of this confusion and fear? And how do we do that in the way that we were taught as Muslims? And I do want to talk about hope. Now, I do think that people are not always clear about what this word hope means. That we have ideas of like rainbows and unicorns and, sparkly stars, and that's what hope is. And that is not the kind of hope I want to talk about. I want to acknowledge that hope is not a noun. It is not something we possess. It is not something that we carry, that we obtain. And hope is also not a feeling. It's not butterflies in our hearts thinking that life will be wonderful. That is not what hope is. And I want to be very clear that in actuality, hope is a noun. Hope is an activity. So we say in Spanish, and we get a little bit closer, esperanza. Esperanza is waiting with faith. And that moves me a little bit closer to where I want to be in this discussion, but to be honest, not even quite. Hope is a verb that is active. It is not just waiting with faith. Hope, from my perspective, is the actual action of continuing on your journey as if, or with the absolute knowledge that it will be perfect as God wills in the end. Let me repeat that. Hope is the action of continuing to walk on your journey with the absolute knowledge that it will be perfect as God wills in the end. And we have Surah 64, Ayah 3. He created the heavens and earth in truth and formed you and perfected your forms, and to him is your final destination. Deep breath. We have Surah 65, verse 3. And whoever replies upon Allah, then he is sufficient for him. Indeed, Allah will accomplish his purpose. Allah has set measure for everything. Now, I want to also acknowledge that this is not sort of a sun will come out tomorrow Pollyanna version of our understanding of the world. Because hope involves accepting the reality of deep pain and despair. Those of us who watched over this past 2 weeks, 3 weeks now, the murder of innocent people by police strength, who have watched that not this time, not that video of 9 minutes several times, but that reality over time, know that the world sometimes is a dark place. It is not sunshine and happiness. And it is for us to look at that and to know that that is also reality. It is not for us to close our eyes and to be in sort of a virtual waiting room. The dunya was not created for us to wait to go to Jannah, for us to sit up in a high seat and look down and say, you know, haram, these poor people, this is what's happening to them, and not get our fingers dirty. That is not what we were placed on this earth as Muslims to do. The dunya, this world which has darkness and which has despair and which has pain, is our place for us to act so that we show our worth to be accepted into the afterlife. It is not for us to sit and observe and maybe to make side commentary to each other. It is the place, it is the world that we have been given to make our actions in as Muslims. And it is a world that has burdens and that has hardships. And we know that in our second surah, the verse 286, Allah does not burden a soul beyond what it can bear, but Allah does burden. And surah 94, ayah 56, so verily with hardship there is relief, but there is hardship. So burden and hardship are not apart from our lives as Muslims. They are very much part. And we know also the verse that, did you think that you would not be tested? Of course. So the question is, how and where do we fit hope into the very deep knowledge that burden and hardship and despair are part of the world that we have been given to make our actions in? The first thing that we do is to trust hope. And that is because Allah himself is the creator and the author of hope. And Allah is the best of planners, and Allah is a lover of justice. Now, hope does not always feel good. Hope causes pain. Imagine having a disease. or being in bondage and waking up every day saying, I just want this to go away, it is much easier to give up. Then you just don't expect anything good to happen, right? And that doesn't cause pain. You say, okay, what life is this, life is dark, life is... The ability to wake up every day and have trust that this is not the end, that every day could be the day that things change, takes courage, takes strength, and takes a faith that is really at the base of who we need to be as Muslims. And we have Surah 3, Ayah 139, do not lose hope or be sad. And sad in this translation really is be in despair. Do not give up. The first job that we have is to actually see hope. Sometimes when we are in those struggles, and those of us who are activists have the worst habits of this, is to say, and this is going to, and this is the way, and this is the way. To be able to see hope, to be aware of small instances of love and of change. So while we see a 75-year-old white male be pushed down by police, I also see a 75-year-old white man who took it upon himself to be at a protest. And what does that say? And while we see people who do not understand perfectly, we see people who are beginning to try to understand what racism, what injustice, what stereotype, what police violence is doing in our world. Is it perfect? No, but do we see those momentary changes, those seeds of change? Absolutely, yes. And that is where we get hope. We also have to celebrate instances of joy. We have had young people who have, for the first time in the history of the United States in over 100 years, had to be educated at home. And yet they are graduating. And yet their teachers have taken the time, and we have had the technology, alhamdulillah, to be able to support education. And that needs to be celebrated. We need to recognize and to take the flavor from those moments of joy when we get them, because we will not always. And we also have to grab the narrative. We need to change the story that we are telling. We are not people of this world, but we are people in this world. So the way that we tell the story of this world is through our knowledge and faith as Muslims, that in the end it will be okay. So we tell a story of construction. We tell a story, we go in like a contractor saying, well, this can be changed, and maybe we can do something over here. We do not tell a story of complete despair. And there's a beautiful Arab saying, where there is ruin, there is hope for treasure. The last piece is the last two pieces are to be hope. Now, I usually don't like to use, kind of glitzy sayings, and Nike has not always been my favorite company, but this week, in speaking of hope, they have declared Juneteenth as a holiday for their employees. So I will say, we need to just do it. When we see a need, when we look and say, what really the world needs in this moment is this, then we need to do that. We do not need to point fingers. We do not need to wait. We do not need to put our hands in our pockets and say, see how they are? If there is a need for hope, then we need to be and fill that need. And I'll say another very sort of overused saying, but it's very true. We need to be the change that we want to see. So if we need more youth programs, we do not need to be pointing fingers. We need to start a youth program. If we need to work on a boycott, we need to work on a boycott. We need to be that active agent of hope, because that is our job. That is our sacred mission as Muslims in this world. And it is that we will build our faith to be acceptable within the sight of of God when it is time for us to go. The last thing that we need, and of course we have in the second surah, verse 190, do what is beautiful. Allah loves those who do what is beautiful. The last thing that we really need is to live hope. Again, as an activist who works with my fingers in injustice every single day, it is so easy to accept the unacceptable and to lose my vision to imagine that things can really be different. And I need to, and we need to, in the world, be that living hope, which means to plan, to demand, and to expect justice and righteousness to happen in this world now, not just at the end, not just in the world to come, but now. We need to plan for justice, demand justice, and expect justice and righteousness from all of the systems that we interact with on an everyday basis. That is why Muslims are in the community. That is our job. That is our commandment, to go and to be the face of not only doing justice, but expecting justice from the societies that we live in. So what I would ask you to take with you this week is not the sun will come out tomorrow, but that we will make the changes that we need to see in the world as Muslims, holding hands and moving forward in every way that we can. Yes. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak about this topic, and I hope that this is not our first conversation, but really our chance, seeing brokenness being our chance to be the contractors, to be the renovators of the societies and the groups that we live in. Shukran.
MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair, Sister Denise. Excellent, excellent reminders, mashallah. So many positive comments. Let me read some of the comments that we have for our Facebook Live friends. Thank you so much, Sister, for the wonderful reminders from Ibrahim. Sister Tahia said, mashallah, what a great session today. Both talks complement each other. I see the youth as a big part of our hope. Sister Maha said, hope does not always feel good. That's very true, subhanAllah. And then Ibrahim said, I love that, mashallah. We are not people of this world, but we are people in this world. I noted that as well. That was, mashallah, that was quite a gem. And there was so many inspirational reminders. So jazakallah khair. You both did such a wonderful job, mashallah. Thank you for joining us. We had a newsletter that went out recently regarding the situation at large today. And we posed some questions to the community. How do we do better? What can we do to prevent the discrimination that is consistently going on in our community, in our Islamic community, and our community at large? Unfortunately, to date, we haven't received any feedback. And I'd like to just put that out there, that we would really like to hear from the community. This is not a community built up of the 6 board members, but it is a community for everyone. It is an inclusive, welcoming community, at least one we're hoping to develop. So if we aren't as inclusive as we should be yet, if we're not as welcoming as we should be yet, tell us what to do to make it better. We're interested in your opinions. So please, by all means, our email is at the bottom of every newsletter we send. Please email us and let us know your thoughts. We want this community to be better than any that are out there. Let's fix the mistakes that other communities have made and go forward in a positive light. To use Sister Denise's word, we have hope. We have hope for our community. So please send us your thoughts. I'm going to unmute everyone. If anyone has anything they'd like to say, you are now unmuted. An opportunity, if you don't want to speak or have noise in the background, you want to mute yourself, feel free. But everyone is able to unmute themselves now, or should be able to. And let me know if you have anything you'd like to contribute.
I will just say one thing in terms of the statement that went out. I can tell you that, for one, I was deeply grateful that 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 was said, because I think if we do not open our mouths in those moments, again, silence is always the tool of the oppressor, right? It is always in the favor of the oppressor. And that is not who we are as Muslims. So for me personally, the fact that I saw that statement, even though I didn't comment immediately, I don't think, it was such a blessing to know that this is the community that I am a part of. And this is the belief, and these are the words that are being spread. So for me, I am so grateful that that statement was made.
Oh, alhamdulillah. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that feedback. We appreciate that. And really, you know, again, we are looking for input. This is a growing, it's a burgeoning community. We are developing this community. There's no rules. There's no set path yet. The board is looking for help and guidance from those that we're looking to serve. It's not again, this is not a community made up of 6 people that sit on the board, 7 people that sit on the board. So please send us your input. Thank you everyone for joining. Anyone else have any comments or something they wanted to add? Okay. So Brother John said, thank you both for today. Excellent presentations. And we all look forward to every Friday. Oh, mashallah. That's so nice to hear. Please look for your newsletter next week. Forgive me for not sending it. I will take that on the chin. So forgive that, but alhamdulillah, you all found us anyway. So inshallah, by all means, Sister Sophia, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, just wanted to say that thank you, everybody. And that I think that hearing from like as close to the youth as we have with you, Ibrahim, is super important, you know, and I think that's why it's great to have you, and please do make your voice less seldom and more often. And Denise, it was such a great balance between inspiration and like our mental health too, right? Like dealing with what we're all going through right now. So I just wanted to thank you. And Nicole, as always, thanks for being an amazing host.
Oh, yes. Mashallah. I love to be the hostess. So alhamdulillah. So, okay, anyway, thank you again for joining us. I'm going to stay on just for a few minutes to talk to some folks independently, but the rest of you, thank you for joining us. We love having you.